Our headline stories: Nigeria considering new crypto regulations, and USSD debt. Telcos insist on payment from banks. The debate over the activities of cryptocurrency exchanges in Nigeria has been in the headlines actively since February. And now, 2 months after the Central Bank of Nigeria banned deposit money banks in the country from transacting business with cryptocurrency exchanges, the Securities and Exchange Commission seems to be waving the white flag. We'll also get into the issue with Nigeria's telcos and banks over USSD debt, discussions around the 42 billion naira debt believed to be what banks owe telecommunication operators. We have a lot to get into, so let's get started. I'm Tolulope Adelaru Balogun. Welcome. This is Business Edge. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, has revealed that it is working with the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, to get better understanding and probably put in regulations of cryptocurrencies in the country. This comes after the CBN had in February restated its ban on deposit money banks and other financial institutions from doing business with cryptos and other digital assets. The Director General of SEC, Lamido Yuguda, said the commission was in discussion with the CBN. He added that the capital market regulator had suspended the implementation of crypto assets guidelines due to a lack of access to Nigerian bank accounts. Now joining me is the founder and CEO of CoinCoin, Ola Atoshe. Of course, he is involved in this sector and want to see what his thoughts are on these issues. Ola, thank you so much for joining us once again on Business Edge. Good to see you.
Always a pleasure, Tolu. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with this. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, has been quoted as saying that they suspended their own regulation because of the CBN's directive. SEC released guidelines regarding the operation of cryptos in September 2020, and it was months later that CBN now restated that ban. But there's been a lot of question about whose responsibility is it to oversee and regulate cryptos as an asset in Nigeria? Is it SEC? Is it CBN, or is it a joint oversight? Ola, what do you think?
Well, it's good to mention that the SEC had a plan to regulate crypto, and I think the perspective, the global view is cryptos can be seen as investment vehicles or securities, investment securities, in which case the SEC should have oversight. But of course, the CBN's view is crypto has been used for payments. It's being used for foreign exchange. So on that basis, crypto isn't an investment security. It is money, if you like. So in that regard, as cryptocurrency or currency, the CBN should have oversight. But as an investment security, which is what it's used for in most cases in the West, the likes of Bitcoin, or Tron, or Ethereum, they're used largely for investment purposes. The SEC should, obviously have a view and some oversight. So my personal point of view would be they should come together and come up with a regulation which would allow us all to get back to work.
Okay. So I can see where you're going with that, but let's look at it in terms of policy formulation. Some would even say flip-flop, and even the signals that it might send to investors and those who are looking to do business in Nigeria. This is supposed to be, as you said, cooperation across regulators. What do you make of a situation where SEC released a guideline on an issue and then shortly after another regulator turns around to ban it? Do you not think there should have been conversations before the SEC guideline came out, after the SEC guideline came out, and then CBN says, okay, you know what, this is the direction we want to go? What perspective do you think we need to take when it looks at regulators not being on the same page in the same industry?
Well, I guess this begs the question, why are they not on the same page? What's really going on in the crypto sphere from the traditional, regulatory perspective? Can't they come together and, set up a regulatory framework? It's very difficult to really answer that question, but what I would guesstimate is from the CBN's perspective, there are international money transfer operators which are licensed by the CBN, who deal with remittances, and it gives the CBN an amount of control on how capital controls, if you like, on how money leaves the country and goes offshore. And the view was, and I believe the view still is by the CBN, that the capital controls which put in place by the CBN to protect Nigeria's economy were being trampled upon by crypto. And I think on that basis, the CBN felt that, well, if our regulations, our current regulations are not being adhered to because of crypto, we will restrict banks that we regulate from dealing in crypto. So I think that's where the thinking of the CBN has come from. In terms of the SEC wanting to do something, I think there should have been more discussions internally between the SEC and the CBN before any sort of circulars or announcements were put out there. But again, it's really hard to say. I'm not sure what the internal protocol is with regards to communication between the SEC and the CBN.
Yes.
But based on where we are now, I would say there's a good chance that they'll have to come together and find a way to solve the problem.
All right, so let's look at the guidelines released in September of 2020. What was in the regulations that SEC released? Did you, in terms, think that SEC was up to speed with the potential of cryptocurrencies, with the potential of digital assets in Nigeria?
And I could be wrong, I got to say, I'm not entirely sure if this is the case, but the way cryptocurrencies are viewed in other parts of the world, and we can cite Coinbase, for example. Coinbase and a lot of Coinbase's users buy cryptocurrency as an investment. I know several people who use Coinbase in the West purely because they want to invest in Bitcoin. So the SEC are right to see Bitcoin and these other cryptocurrencies as an investment security. And if they are investment securities, then it does come under the purview of the SEC to regulate, right? So from the SEC's perspective, I'm sure they would have come out with a robust sort of a view of how do we protect the consumer. That's the view that the SEC would have taken. How do we protect the consumer who wants to invest in cryptocurrency? So that's the view I believe the SEC would have taken and probably still wants to take. And how do we protect Nigerians from investing? Are Nigerians properly educated on what cryptocurrencies are? This is a question the SEC is asking, and the SEC perhaps has in their mind, a framework by which Nigerians will be educated, understand what they're putting their money into, understand, what these investments are all about before getting involved. And that's, it's the same, that's the same in other countries. In the United Kingdom, there's a big push on consumer protection.
Yeah.
Does the consumer, and that's what the SEC tried to do.
Okay, so let's look at this issue as well with the CBN. As you said, consumer protection is massive in this, and of course, it's a financial system, and the everyday man can somehow get caught up. But there are those who say that some of the reasons given by the CBN in terms of restricting the use or the operation of cryptos in the country are just simply not genuine. And one of those reasons has been money laundering. How long has crypto been around? Money laundering has been happening before cryptocurrencies were a thing. It was happening in Nigeria, happening across the world. So as a reason, many people find that to be quite disingenuous. Looking at the reasons the CBN has said, do you think there's something to it, to the hesitancy, to the need for them to regulate this space?
Right. Money laundering is it's as old as money itself.
Yes.
And it was going on, in all banks, all over the world. I mean, if you look for, the investment banks in the West that were fined over the years, billions of dollars because of money laundering, right? So this is something that's been around long before the blockchain, long before crypto. So yes, it's in some regard crypto that you could make the case that, there is some element of money laundering, but it's nothing new, right? And what we did previously with money laundering is we put in a AML, the anti-money laundering regime, counter-terrorist financing regime, and the same can apply to cryptocurrency. The same should apply to the cryptocurrency. And we have the technology to do that. So it's not a big enough excuse to say cryptocurrency causes crime, therefore we have to ban cryptocurrency. No, what we have to do is find a way to regulate it, because what we see now is we see a lot of people going underground, P2P, which is the peer-to-peer services. Of course, there's a huge premiums being charged to local Nigerians who want to procure Bitcoin. So all this underground trading of Bitcoin in itself it's bringing, additional issues. It's bringing and causing potentially even more crime. So my view would be a regulatory framework is needed. We need to find a way to move forward to regulate crypto in Nigeria. We need to find a way to do it very quickly, because whether we like it or not, crypto is here to stay. Yeah. People will go out with crypto. It's best if they do so in a regulated environment.
All right, so let me take a quick break. We still have some issues to get into on this crypto thing, but also for those watching, 42 billion naira. That's a number I want you to hold on to, because we're going to get into why it is the bone of contention between banks and telcos in Nigeria. This is Business Edge. Stay with us. This is still Business Edge, and looking at the potential, the possibility, and the very likelihood of regulation of cryptocurrencies in Nigeria. Now, Ola, the president of the Abuja Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Dr. Al-Mujtaba Abakar, urged the Nigerian government to set up a presidential task force on cryptocurrency adoption, citing increased adoption of cryptos in the global markets. Now, do you think this is a possible solution, or this just becomes more paper pushing, more policy that at the end, like many people are worried, might stifle the sector and probably just bring about taxes and regimes and chase people away?
Yeah, so in terms of the politic around cryptocurrencies, what should be done, and, circulars put out there or discussions around how to regulate crypto, I think it's well understood how you can regulate crypto. We know what the issues are. We know where the pain points are. Other countries have brought in some sort of regulation that works. There are a lot of things we could do to learn from that. In setting up a task force, fine, it could be a foundation or a beginning, if you wish, to the process which finally leads us down that regulatory framework which we're all after. But that said, what's the task force going to do? What's it going to be made up of? Is it going to be made up of regulatory experts, or is it going to have bankers or crypto experts? Who are the people making the decisions on what needs to be done and how it will be done, right? So these are the questions we need to ask. And, what is it that the CBN would like to achieve, right? Is their major concern capital flight? If it is, then that's understandable. Let's find a way to put regulations in place to ensure that capital flight isn't an issue for Nigeria, for the Nigerian economy. Is the issue crime? The travel rule. If I send crypto from one wallet to another, do I know where it's going to? Do I know where it's come from? Is that the issue? Let's answer those questions. Is it a know your customer issue? Is it a enhanced due diligence? Where is the money coming from? People who are investing in crypto. Where have they got the money from? These are, regulatory issues, and, these are questions which are valid, and we need to answer those questions. We need to be dealing with people who understand regulatory norms in banking, and who also understand the crypto tech and the blockchain, and how best we can regulate it to make it safe, for the nation, and of course, make it safe, for users and crypto exchanges, like ourselves.
Okay, I'll ask a final question on this, and I think I'm going to put you on the spot. So giving me a yes or no. I won't take a maybe. Do you think Nigeria's policymakers, the CBN, SEC, those who are going to put together what we are definitely sure will be some regulation, do you think they can adequately do justice to regulating this space the way it needs to be regulated without strangling the space?
Yes.
You believe?
With the right help,
okay.
I think they can do it. They need assistance. They need to understand a little bit more about the tech, and they need to understand how they can limit it. I'll give you an example. So what does the United Kingdom do? The United Kingdom puts limits, right? So to get fiat or cash into a cryptocurrency exchange, it's limited, right? One of the payment service providers I work with in the UK, for example, limits users to 3 deposits a week. Right, and what that does is it stems that sort of capital outflow into crypto. So that's one thing the CBN can look at, right? For example, another thing that happens in the UK is we have maximum day limits, maximum weekly limits, maximum monthly limits, which prevents the entire the nation's currency moving all into crypto, right?
Okay.
So this is what's being done, not just in the UK, but across, other countries which have chosen to regulate this space. So these are things that the CBN can also duplicate, and it works, right? The CBN just needs to know that the technology is there, and, we're here to help. I'm here to assist in any way I can to make sure I can go back.
All right, so let's get to our next conversation before we wrap up the show. Now, we're back to this conversation on the telecommunications companies in Nigeria and the banks. Now, the telcos are calling for the intervention of the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Nigerian Communications Commission over the lingering 42 billion naira indebtedness of deposit money banks to telcos. So the chairman of the Association of Licensed Telecommunications Operators of Nigeria, Gbenga Adebayo, said that the amount was accumulated over a year and was for unstructured supplementary service data, or USSD, services rendered to the banks. He said it has become a moral obligation because the banks used the services, debited their customer accounts, and now are not paying the telcos. So let's get further into that. And we go straight to a comment that has been attributed to the CEO of Access Bank, Herbert Wige. And he said that Nigerian banks are not indebted to telecommunications firms for using telco platforms to provide payment services. He's quoted as saying that there's no such thing as an obligation due from banks to telcos. Ola, was there an official agreement between the banks and the telcos? Why does this keep coming up?
Well, it's a hard one, and I wouldn't want to wade into the waters of the muddy waters of banking. I thought I left that all behind a long time ago. But to try and answer your question, the banks simply feel that the telcos won't have the business if the banks don't give it to them. And for those of us who have been in banking for a long time, we understand that we could give business as bankers to a variety of vendors, not just telcos. So the view is, if there are any charges, that the telcos have, and in line with, I don't know if there's any international standards, but I do know that for most services or similar services provided in different parts of the world, the telco will reach out to their customers and say, please be aware that if you use these type of services, there could be extra charges. So typically the expectation is the telcos would charge the customer directly. I'm sure that wasn't the case here, wasn't agreed. That's not been the agreement. And I think one of the reasons why, the telcos aren't charging users is, and I could be wrong, but I, just not entirely speculating, is down to financial inclusion. So in essence, start charging the users, who just want to do a simple transaction. They haven't got access to the internet. They use this, structured, simplified messaging service, to do money transfers. If you start charging them for that, they're going to use it less and less. And the whole idea of financial inclusion, which is what we all want in Nigeria and Africa, will get hampered. So I think that's also an issue. So they're kind of stuck in the middle. The banks are charging users to use USSD, but the banks are not just charging for USSD, they're charging for a variety of other services that they provide, right? And then the telcos are left with, well, we're providing you with the ability to do all this, and we all have costs that have to be paid. So it's really unfortunate that we'll have to be some sort of decision that the NCC and the CBN will have to come to.
Yeah.
And it's very unfortunate if it happens that the users, and obviously persons like myself who, well, actually USSD, I don't think I've actually used it before, but for what it's worth, there are a lot of people who use it. And, it will be unfair if they get charged. I think the charge that was put out there was #6.98 each time you use it. And you can imagine there are people who do, multiple
transactions. So Ola, let's get into the cost right now. So there was a stakeholders meeting in March that was convened by the Minister of Technology, sitting under the NCC and everything. So there were a few resolutions, namely that effective from March 16th, USSD services for financial transactions conducted at DMBs and all CBN licensed institutions were to be charged at a flat fee of 6.98 kobo per transaction. Also, the new USSD charges would be collected on behalf of the mobile operators, that is the telcos, directly from customers' bank accounts. banks were not to impose additional charges on customers for the use of the USSD channel. And then there was supposed to be a settlement plan for outstanding payments incurred for USSD services previously rendered. And that's where that $42 billion that was said to have been accumulated over the past year. So that was supposed to be worked out by all the parties in a bid to ensure that the matter is resolved. But obviously it's not. We're back here again. They're calling for CBN and NCC to get involved again. What's the next step? What happens now? What do you think?
Well, I think the CBN governor mentioned previously that it's going to be very difficult for the banks to agree to these charges, simply because, as I mentioned earlier, the banks feel that the telcos wouldn't have this business without them. I think there needs to be some sort of compromise and some sort of deeper understanding, right? So they've sat down, they've had these conversations before. I think they need to come back with a slightly different view. What are the actual costs to the telcos, right? Where is it? How do they quantify, their cost? I mean, obviously, it's infrastructure largely, but how do they quantify that? That's the first thing. And secondly, what can the banks do to assist, right? Because the telcos can potentially just pass the charges on directly, right? Every time you use a USSD, the telcos could charge the users directly, And is there a way to do that in such a way that the users are not hampered, that they're not,
pushed away?
They don't feel like, pushed away from using this service, because that in itself will be a problem. So I think there's a lot of brainstorming needed by the NCC and the CBN. It's very difficult, again, for me to weigh in. What I will say is, the future is upon us. USSD, like SMS, is quite old. And there are new technologies which will eventually allow users, to move money around, much, cheaper rates. And, part of what we're trying to do with CoinCoin is make it easier for people to move, coin from wallet to wallet. And that's something we will be introducing in the coming months. So maybe, perhaps look at a new solution altogether.
Maybe you will be the solution to all of this. Ola Atoshe, thank you so much for joining me, the CEO and founder of CoinCoin. Thank you so much for joining us on Business Edge.
Thank you, Tolu. Always a pleasure.
All right. And it looks like the CBN does have its work cut out for it. It's putting together some restrictions, some regulations, some guidelines for cryptos, and also weighing into the debt issue between the telcos and the banks. As there are developments, we will, of course, bring them to you right here on Business Edge. All right, let's wrap things up. And you know how we do that with NC4 to watch. And we start in Nigeria. The total revenue generated by the NNPC from crude oil and gas exports plunged by 45.98% last year amid the COVID-19-induced collapse in price and demand. Nigeria's revenue from the exports of crude oil and gas fell to $2.62 billion in 2020 from $4.85, almost double in the previous year, as the COVID pandemic triggered a sharp decline in prices and demand for the commodity. And staying in Nigeria, the federal government has recorded a 485.51 billion naira financial deficit in January, according to statistics obtained from the Central Bank of Nigeria. Now, according to the monthly economic report for January, the low revenue performance in the month was due to the decline in non-oil receipts following the lingering effects of COVID on business activities and the resulting shortfall in tax revenues. Number 3 on our list, copper prices have risen on Monday on hopes of a global economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. The boost is on the backdrop of accelerating vaccine rollouts in more countries emerging from lockdown. And finally, number 4, the judiciary in Ghana has plans to establish a tax court to deal with the prosecution of tax cases. Now, according to the Chief Justice and the Ghana Bar Association, the tax court will be located at the Criminal Division of the Court of Appeal within the Supreme Court building. Tax cases in the past have been prosecuted in circuit courts, and taxpayers are required to meet their obligations as prescribed by law. And where they fail to do so, the Ghana Revenue Authority has the power to address that failure using a number of measures. And that's all on this edition of Business Edge. Don't forget to follow us on social media. We're at News Central TV. If you've missed any of our financial, business, and economic conversations from here on the continent, you can head to our website. You can also go to YouTube and find those conversations. Until next time, I'm Tolulakwe Adileru Balogun.